Right. Call Allah, Yallah, Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakaha Kodash, and dub honors unto the elders and apostles of GMS who do rule well, who taught us his truth, and peace, and blessings and salutations into the hopeful elect. Play this video. I posted this in my channel. I wanted to go into it a little more. Um, this is deals with the fall of Rome, and the different strategies that was used by women, in ensuing the fall of these different kingdoms, man, the fall of men. You know what I'm saying? And that's why, because I see this coming for a lot of brothers. I really don't really do really a lot of lessons on women because at the end of the day, that's not a topic that I'm too familiar with and dealing with, experienced enough in. I should say, but I can say, through watching and just observing certain things that have been my life, the different women that I've, been around and, I've spoken with, you know, um, this is definitely a thing that ends up in being the end of a lot of men, bro. The pillow talking and, murmuring and, putting out false lies and pretty much putting things in her man's head about other women and other men and all these different things. See, women know how to play mind games like that. And this is I'm gonna play the video and I posted it in the channel. On my page. But you can see when you'll see how women was used as a tool, as a catalyst, to pretty much lead you out of your wits, man, lead you out of your path. And that's why the Lord, was getting on the men. Show yourself as men. Show yourself as men. You know, and pretty much, knowing when to put your foot down, when not to. You know, understanding the difference between a harlot and a wife. Understanding the difference between a woman that's good for you and a woman or that's good that makes you feel good and a woman that's good for you. I should say like that. You know, because of that feeling, you're gonna go through things. When you get relationships, you're gonna go through things. But just to decipher these little different tactics that's even used in this, obviously in this kingdom today. You know, women look good or whatever, is to your liking, whatever brothers like. You may roll up on that. You know what I'm saying? You want to, spit game, or however you do it, however you know what I'm saying, talk to these women or try to, get to know them or, mingle, whatever. You feel me? But at the end of the day, that all of that is fine and dandy. But, understanding the difference between a Proverbs 31, as they like to say, or a woman that's good for you in season. But I'm not knocking our brother's deal, you know. And it does say you can deal with an unbelieving wife, you can deal with however you want to deal, but understand the times that you in, because black widows do exist and they are out there to trap you, brothers, man. And also, you do have agents out there as well, you know. And this is something that I feel like I've came across within my own walk, with dealing with, certain women or certain things I've seen out of women um, within my walk, man. But at the end of the day, I just say, just be careful however you deal. Just be careful, man. Just be careful, brother. Because you don't think Satan's going to send his head mistresses after you. You don't think the head mistress is going to send her, her little Jezebels after you in these times too. Because remember, those are devices for the devil too. So I'm going to play the video, let it run for a little bit. And then I'm going to get into, a couple of scriptures and I'm going to end it. It fled east to the impregnable fortress city of Constantinople, to the gleaming capital on the Bosphorus, Constantinople. Here, the Roman Empire would not just survive, it would thrive for another 1,000 years, a magnificent, labyrinthine, and utterly ruthless organism we now call the Byzantine Empire. And it is here, within the gilded cages of the great palace, amidst the scent of incense and the quiet rustle of silk, that our historical case study deepens into something far more complex and psychologically terrifying. The fall of the West revealed hypergamy in its raw, primal form,
a reaction to immediate physical danger, but the survival of the East reveals its evolution into its most potent and sophisticated state, no longer just a strategy of survival, but a weaponized instrument of supreme political power.
And that's what I wanted you to recognize right there. That's what we get into, how it was a weaponized instrument of extreme. But you, if you go back and watch the video, you'll see more of what it's getting into and how women use their tactics to weaponize these different ideologies, and putting things in the men's head, putting things in your ear. And that's why the spirit been out there to get on certain brothers, to get on women that that are wives to certain brothers, man. We get it. People, we all getting hit hard in certain ways. At the end of the day, you better, if that man, that's a man of the Lord. I try to stick with that, brother, man. Especially in these times. Don't mess up something good that you got going. Through outside forces. But this is what we're wanting to get into.
Find life were invisible. Balls were a game where the prize is not is the story of how female mating strategy, when channeled through the dizzying heights of ultimate power, becomes a game of shadows, a game where the prize is not just survival, but the very destiny of civilization. To understand the Byzantine world is to understand a perpetual state of siege mentality refined into an art form. Constantinople was a city perpetually aware of its own preciousness, its own fragility. The Theodosian walls were a marvel of military engineering, a triple layered bastion of stone that repelled armies for centuries. But the real walls, the ones that truly defined life, were invisible. They were the walls of protocol, of religious orthodoxy, of elaborate court hierarchy, and of breathtaking, constant paranoia. The emperor. Are you blown away by how even average women get endless attention from men, can easily get dates? The emperor, the Basileus, was not merely a king. He was God's vice regent on earth, a semi divine figure shrouded in ritual so complex it was a form of psychological warfare. To approach him was to engage in a ballet of subordination, prostrations, specific
It's a lock here for the image on the left in advance.
forms of address, the wearing of certain colors. This created a world where power was not just about physical strength or military command, though those were important. It was about proximity, access, and information.
There you
The
go.
key to this inner
Information.
sanctum, this holy of holies of power, was often not the general or the eunuch administrator, though they had their roles.
And this is what I want to get to. We want to get to the point now.
Porphyry chambers of the palace. But Theodora's genius was not in making the leap, it was in understanding what to do once she got there. She did not just become his wife, she became his partner in the most profound sense. She recognized that his power, and by extension, hers, was vulnerable. It was vulnerable to the mob, to the scheming senators, to the heresies that could split the empire. Her mating strategy evolved from securing the man to securing the system that upheld the man. She became his chief advisor, his most ruthless strategist. Her most famous moment, the moment that reveals the sheer steel of her will, came during the Nika riots. The city was in flames. The mob had declared a new emperor. Justinian's court was paralyzed with fear, urging him to flee to save himself while he could. It was Theodora who stood up and stopped him. The historian Procopius, who despised her, records her speech. Royalty is a fine burial shroud. She told him that flight was not an option, that for an emperor to become a fugitive was a. She convinced him to stay, to fight. Her general, Belisarius, marched in and slaughtered tens of thousands in the Hippodrome, cementing Justinian's power absolutely. Theodora's value was not just in her beauty or her charm, it was in her psychological fortitude, her understanding of power's theater, and her absolute refusal to descend back into the obscurity from which she came.
Pretty much, putting on performances of a harlot. That's what was going on at that time.
Her hypergamy was active, not passive. She didn't just choose a powerful man, she forged him, defended him, and through him, ruled an empire. This is the dark zenith of the strategy we saw in the crumbling West, not merely adapting to a changing world, but seizing the reins and directing the change itself. But for every Theodora, there were a dozen other women playing the same game with less spectacular but equally ruthless precision. The Byzantine court was a deadly ecosystem, and the women within it were its most efficient predators. Consider the concept of the Porphyron Genita.
I'm gonna go back. Now you got that understanding of how the women. Now this is what we want to get into. We're dealing with, the whispering, murmuring.
Value of savings and salaried work. A new class of men, not barbarian chieftains, but influencers, crypto bros, and hyper competitive alpha males in the digital arena, wield a new form of power, attention, social capital, and often volatile non state aligned wealth. They are the modern Alaric.
And that's what you get into. You get into that psyoptic, two-headed beast government, because the Byzantine and Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire started to rise up after the Byzantine Empire with different ideologies. You see what I'm saying? But this is all, these are all theologies. All started, what I'm saying? This really all started through, the rise of certain women influencing certain kings, working their way around throughout history, and we gonna get some scriptures on it too. But that's what this is going into, the particular women that was doing it during this time. Theodora, and it's going to talk about this the how amongst men. That's why you're not supposed to. I see why the elders of GMS, they don't have their women around the men. It's not good. It's not a good look. And if the murmuring and stuff and all that, these things that go down, you know you got to ask yourself how that look in Abba's eyes, man. But that's on you to
operating outside the old systems. And female choice, en masse, is beginning to reflect this new landscape. The instinct is the same, only the battlefield has changed. Understanding this is not about bitterness, it is about clarity. It is about seeing the game for what it is, not what we were taught it should be in a more orderly, more virtuous time that may have never existed outside of storybooks. The fall of Rome teaches us that civilization is a fragile agreement, a temporary suppression of raw nature. When the agreement breaks down, nature always returns.
He's absolutely
And the
correct.
most potent force of nature is the drive to survive and to ensure one's genetic legacy survives by any means necessary. But the story of Rome does not end with the collapse of the Western Empire and the shifting loyalties of its women. This was merely the first act in a far grander, darker historical drama. Now we will journey east to the impregnable walls of Constantinople, to an empire.
And fair use, fair use. This is all used for educational purposes and edification. We're going to start here. This is First Ezra, chapter 4, verse 26. It says, Yea, many there be that have ran out of their wits for women and become servants for their sakes. Many have also perished and have erred and sinned for women. Verse 28. When you get into Ezra, that was what was going on. That's what pretty much teed Nehemiah off, dealing with strange women. Seeing as King Solomon, the wisest king, he was persuaded and he fell through the idol worship of a strange woman. You see, and that's why dealing with women, just be careful, man. Witchcraft is out there; it's real, but also women know how to. They're a device used by Satan too. You know, obviously, you know what the wildebeest looks like when you see it. Yelling and screaming and all that shit. If it's not feminine, you know not to deal with it at all. But at the end of the day, even if it is feminine, that soft girl era bullshit. Be careful, man. That's all I'm gonna say. And it says, verse 28. It says, and now do ye not believe me? Is not the king great in his power? It said, do not all the regions fear to touch him? And seeing how was a woman, with the video we just said, well, how was a woman able to get close to the king and influence him? Men, men not being, not people, not the men not showing themselves as men. You know, to get that real quick. Come on. This is First Kings chapter 2, verse 2. It says, "I go all the way of the earth." I'm to get context. It says, "Now the days of David drew nigh, and that he should die. David was at his end, King David." It says, and he charged Solomon his son, saying, "I go the way of all the earth. Be thou strong, therefore, and shew thyself a man." You know, it talks about just getting the context of the story. Because we know King Solomon fell through idol worship of a strange woman, man. It says, "And keep the charge of the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, and to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest, and whithersoever thou turnest, man." And I want to get this too. Let's go to Sirach, you know, as far as, the women, because, you're going to get women, bro. But just in choosing your wife, think of think of putting yourself in that situation. We're the Lord's woman, as a nation, right? The Lord Yahweh Shai, the Lord Yahweh, the Lord Yahweh Shai, then us, and then you have the wife, or the woman that you choose, and the children. The Lord didn't choose based off of look; He chose based off the spirit of the individual that He was dealing with. So when you analyze the spirit of a woman that you want to deal with, right, in the truth, if you're in the truth, or if these things do come your way, these just things to help you understand, like, man, it's really not a safe time. All these diseases running out there, a lot of women, and you don't even know if they're really women anymore. You know, black widows do exist. That really hate men, like they want to kill you. They feel as if since they got caught up with a disease from another nasty nigga, or them doing for very abominable activities with other women. They feel as if they got it. They got to give it to you too. You know, there's some wicked people out here, man. I'm just giving you perspective on how you should choose, and it's not based off the look, man. But Sirach 26:1, it says, "Blessed is the man that have a virtuous wife, for the number of his days shall be doubled." It says, "A virtuous woman rejoiceth for us." And how is she rejoicing? Is she making you feel, is she helping you, in this ministry? Is she being your peace? Is she helping you maintain the order? Or is she, more of a hindrance in how you serve Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai? How is she helping you? Are y'all working to achieve more for? Are you working to achieve more of her goals, or how she feels things should be, or is she helping to achieve how you should be, or how you know you should be for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, under the order that you prescribe? That's how because through that obedience on her part, that's how she's gonna be saved through you. So it's a really, and like the elder Yahshua said when I watched the video, man, some people just ain't ready for women. I'm one of them type of brothers. I feel like I'm good being single, bro. I'm not ready for no woman, man. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of on your part as a man, and at the same time, the modern day woman that we have to deal with today, they not ready. They're not trying to be in this for real, bro. I mean, I'm just gonna keep it 1,000 with you. They ain't really for this type of shit, man. Until the Lord really turns it up, that Isaiah 4:1 takes effect. And then, but at the end of the day, even then, use wisdom, man. Black Widow's gonna be active then too. It's gonna be a slaughter fest, right? So use your head, not your dick. Excuse my language. Use your head, not your pelvic, your lower pelvic part. It says, verse 2. It says, a virtuous woman rejoiceth her husband, and he shall fulfill the years of his life in peace. In verse 3, it says, a good wife is a good portion. A good wife is a good portion, which shall be given in the portion of them that fear the Lord, man. So, you brothers that's fearing the Lord, just wait. Don't try to rush something. If you have a good thing going for yourself in Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, don't rush it. Just continue to build yourself up. Continue to listen to the truth. Continue to, if you're working out, what I'm saying, hit the gym, do what you gotta do in the world, whatever. What I'm saying? Use it to, but don't abuse it. At the end of the day, we coming into times when we about to, this truth about to be taken out, though. A lot of prophecy about to take place, and that's one of them. Isaiah 4:1. I just felt that my spirit should be good to go ahead and get into these type of things. It's just understanding that you can't deal. Timothy talks about how you can deal with certain women, you can deal with unbelieving wife, you can deal with all those things, but those are all going to be tests too when you think about it. I see your part as your character as being a judge, as being a spiritual man. You know, it says verse 4. It says, whether a man be rich or poor, if he have a good heart towards the Lord, he shall at all times rejoice with a cheerful countenance. Kala Yama Yahweh Bashem Yahushua Bashem Rakah Kodash. Like I said, I'm gonna keep reading because this is the warning. There be three things in my heart feareth. It says the fourth, I was so afraid. Three things that the Lord, that it's Iraq, it's going to see the knowledge of King Solomon. There be three things that my heart feareth. It says the fourth, I was so afraid. It says the slander of a city. It says the gathering together of an unruly multitude, a false accusation. All these are worse than death, man. The murmuring, we just read about it. Well, we just, seen the video, the visuals about the murmuring and, how women slander. And you could watch it, you go back and watch the video and it talks more about, it gets more in detail, more than what I brought out. My thing was just, on the type of women that they were and how these things was used in empires to destroy empires and destroy ideologies and, men, you know. King Solomon said, out of 1,000 women, he found none good, but out of 1,000 men, he could find one. You do the math with that, man. How much more in the time that we in right now. So it's Iraq 26:6, man. It says, but a grief of the heart, but a grief of heart and sorrow is a woman that is jealous over another woman, and the scourge of a tongue, and a scourge of the tongue which communicateth with all. An evil wife is a yoke shaken to and fro. I'm telling you, man, you would never get rid of that, man. It's full of demons, bro. I'm like, for real, bro. Relax, nigga. Nah, brother, for real though. No jokes aside, relax, sit down. Chill. It's not that serious. Having a wife is not that serious right about now, man. He's, you're gonna get all those things right about now. It's if you doing what you're supposed to do, you're moving right. The Lord's eyes, you're building yourself up, man. Just hold on. It says, "He that have a hold of her is as." It says, "He that have hold of her is as though he held a scorpion." Verse 8, a drunken woman and a gatherer abroad cause great anger. And that's the type of woman you're going to see out there. When Isaiah 4:1 takes place, you're going to see a lot of bad women out there, bro. It's beautiful women that's homeless. I've seen it in my walk when I was homeless, man. There's women who, very beautiful women, take care of their body, everything. They homeless though, you know. But you gotta understand, is that right for you, you know? Because men and the Lord gonna be separate from regular men. Anyways, it says, and she would not cover her own shame. Verse 9, it says, the whoredom of a woman may be known, and her haughty looks and her eyelids. I mean, brothers gonna like what they like. You obviously don't be wanting to deal with Big Shirley or anything like that. But at the end of the day, Be careful. Don't be taken by the look at, bro. Looks are all when it comes to relationships. Looks are deceiving, bro. Off the rip, you can't never trust. You can't never trust your first thought. Based on off of a look. Anyways, verse 10. It says, "If thy daughter be shameless, keep her in straitly, but lest she abuse herself through much liberty, man." Man, that's pretty much the point, man. Just pretty much separating good wife from an evil wife type. Just when you choose when you're out there dealing with women or when you out there in general, how you carry yourself. Because a woman gonna if she's supposed to help uplift you. You uplifting her uplifting you is gonna it's supposed to be a boost for you to uplift Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, particularly in this case Yahweh Shai, which gives the Heavenly Father glory, man. It's order. So if she's not helping you in this ministry, do that, and I'm just gonna be honest with you, brothers. Be me personally, if I were to deal with a woman, I would want to deal with a woman that's more so good with her hands than her ability in the bed. You know, how good are you with your hands? How can we deal? Because I like to deal with herbs and a whole bunch of other stuff. So like we can, I would want one that's actually good with her hands with sewing and pretty much little stuff like that. Stuff that's you're gonna be able to help you out with what you got going on in your walk. You know, because everything ain't for everybody. And if you, like I said, if you plan on staying in this system, you're gonna have to take the chip. Whether you got riches or you got poor, or you poor. But like I said, men of the Lord are going to be separate and going to be different in those times. And I pray that the Lord Yahweh Shem shall keep me and keep me safe from evil women as well as you brothers as well, man. You include you young brothers, especially you young brothers, man. Because it is it's a trip, man. It's a trip. I've been in situations where brothers have like literally cry like babies over women. And it's and crying and drinking and lost their life and they was working out, they was boxing and looking good and all kind of shit, what I'm saying. But a breakup with a woman or being betrayed and because that shit hurts, man. Betrayal hurts. But they done like they done totally lost it. But anyways, I ain't gonna continue to be the dead horse. Just be careful out there, man. And stay strapped up. If you do what you do, because sexual diseases are out there. Obviously I go into the germs and all the different type of stuff that's out there that people could possibly potentially be affected with and be affected of, man. So I mean that right there, man. Call Allah, Yamla, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakab, Kudash, and the bonds to the elders and apostles of GMS and all the affiliate elders of under GMS, who taught us his truth and is teaching us his truth and pushing it on all four corners of the earth. And shalom to the hopeful elect.